are, and welcome to an almost instant reaction episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast, because we are talking about the Oscars. As Lily reminded me the other day, we are in fact a movie podcast, and even if it isn't,
Shai literally was like, "Oh no, I'm not talking about that," and I was like, "But it's about movies." And that's what we do. He's like, "Oh, really? Oh, I guess." And I was like,
all I can say
I
is
think this year of all years, I think we really do need to say something.
Because I've been getting more and more bored with award shows and things like that.
Right.
But
Which is fair, because
all I can say is thank goodness, because I was thinking of her. Kedenard Raymond, one of our favorite returning guests, texted us like an angel from heaven and essentially said, "Cormans, I am here for you."
Let's do this.
Let's do this. So, but before we get into the controversies of the night, I think one of the important things to do is to reflect on a lot of good that we saw in this year's awards. And I think in a year where I couldn't have cared less going into the awards, I found myself super pleased with a lot of the winners and pleased that I had gone to see movies that ended up, a lot of them ended up being worth it, because I mean worth the time, because they ended up winning and my emotional investment in them was really good. I will leave the Dune stuff to Becky, but I want to say thank you to Becky, because going to see Dune was a thing that we did together and was something that was spurred by her and Vlad, and I was quite invested in Dune winning, and I didn't think they were going to win anything, so I was really happy about that. But I want to start really with Questlove winning for the Summer of Soul.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest musicians of our time, greatest band leaders, greatest drummers. He's from Philly. Like, everything about Questlove is just incredible. The arc of that career, and to have him win an Oscar just made me so
happy.
Agree. Yeah. It was a beautiful moment. I think Summer of Soul might have been like the first movie I saw in theaters
really?
that I felt comfortable seeing, like, in the pandemic. And the theater was empty. It was just me and Doug. And we sat in the theater afterwards until like 2:00 in the morning. Just talk, because Doug's a musician too, right? So he's talking about like what the documentary sort of went over and all those great acts, but also similar to what Quest said in his acceptance speech, just the marginalization that happens with our art and our moments, and how like we find a way, but even when we find a way, like these tapes or these decks or whatever they were like on the cutting room floor for like how many years. So like Shai, it was a beautiful moment to see, for both for Questlove and then for everything that's sort of implicated in that documentary. I loved it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. For him personally, and then to see the documentary get honored like that.
Yeah,
it was awesome. And I love a good music doc. And so
I don't feel like they often win Oscars. It's also pretty
well. Standing in the Shadows of Motown, I think did,
but like in the scheme of things, it's not.
What I love about a music documentary is when it covers ground that people haven't really looked at, and that's what this does. So I think this is amazing. It means you can come to it and enjoy it whether you're a music fan or not. And I think that's what's, I love that won. Let me kick it over to Becky. Becky, you were very invested in some of these Oscars, weren't you?
I mean, I was. Well, first I want to give a shout out to my former boss and colleagues and mentors. I want to give a shout out to John Shank and Saren Marshall, who were nominated for their film, along with Pedro Cos, who co-directed with John. They were nominated for their short doc. That I'm sorry, I'm literally blanking on the name.
Was it Lead Me Home?
Lead Me Home. I was like, Away from Home. Lead Me Home. But they didn't win, but they were nominated, and that's still really meaningful and special and wonderful. And I'm really proud of them and proud of that team, and excited for them. Got some fun texts from Saren about the night as well. So it's always fun to have a friend on the inside for an epic night. And then, my other big investment was, as we talked about, Dune, and like how excited I was for that movie, how excited I was watching that movie and seeing it just get so many of the, seeing it win so many awards that highlight the craftsmanship that went into that was really fun.
Cool. What about you, Lil? Were there any awards that you were into?
I think I was really excited. I was really excited for Will Smith to win. I was hoping he was going to win. So again,
and by the way, me too.
Second,
Yes.
I loved that movie.
You and
I haven't loved a movie.
Haven't seen it yet, but
I haven't loved a movie like that in a
really
really long time, where the movie ended and I wanted to see more. And I was like, oh, it's only 2.5 hours? Like, I want the rest of the story, even though I know a lot of the story.
Loving that movie was so much about his performance, right? Like the reason you're hanging on every scene is because he's so compelling in the role.
I would say it wouldn't work if he wasn't amazing. He's amazing, but he's a fundamental part of that. But I think the whole film is great. And then his sort of like the center of this energy in the film that is really, really, I just think it was really good storytelling. The acting was amazing, but I guess he is the fundamental part, but the whole film is great. And the women in the film are amazing too. And his co-star, whose name I can't remember because I'm terrible with names. Yes. Thank you. Was also nominated. I thought she was fantastic. I'm sad that she didn't win. But so I was really excited that he was getting recognized and the film was getting recognized, because I was like, I assumed nobody would be nominated for this movie. I just was like, oh, no one's it's the Williams sisters. No one's going to pay attention to a tennis movie. So I was excited that was getting so much attention. And I was really hoping that somebody from Coda would be nominated, Marlee Matlin and Troy Kotsur. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I'm terrible with names. Kotsur?
Sure. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's
Kotsur. Right. And when he was nominated, I guess, for the Golden Globe, or he won the Golden Globe or something, he won another award. I was like, oh, maybe there's a chance. I think she also could have been nominated. She was fantastic. And then seeing him win, I didn't need it to win Best Picture or anything. That's fine that it did, but seeing him win for that, just like made me so happy. Such a deserved award. That he's so good in that movie. And it's a really, really beautiful movie. So yeah, I was pretty happy.
So then when you hear how we've talked about all of these different films, I think one of the main takeaways for me is that diversity and inclusion really showed up in an authentic way. It wasn't about like
the token we have to nominate.
It wasn't like, who is the host and like, are you going to talk about these themes and are you going to force this issue? It was just like, these are the films. They resonated in different ways. I wasn't expecting Coda to move me the way that it did. I actually have a brother who's deaf, my younger brother. He's hearing impaired.
Oh wow.
And his presence in our lives, because he's hearing impaired, he's not 100% deaf. And the fact that my immigrant parents weren't sensitive in the way that parents are now to like raising kids. They just raised him as a fully abled kid. They did not like care for the part of him that's hearing impaired, the part of him that maybe can't communicate as well and can't hear as well. And it's only in adulthood and in all of the conversations around inclusion and ability and all of these things that I've become more sensitive to like what his life might have been like. And so, yeah, to go back to Coda, I was just like, I remember hearing an interview on NPR as they sort of did their rounds to promote the film. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll go check it out. But seeing it win, even though like some critics were kind of like, I don't know about Best Picture, it's a statement, and I think it's one of the most sincere ways to say like you belong. So I was really happy with the slate. Like overall, I feel like it was a good story, and I don't want to jump the gun, but essentially that I feel was overshadowed because of the spectacle of Sunday.
So I'm like Kedenard said, I'm glad we started with talking about these other great stories, because there was a moment that overshadowed things. And I actually didn't watch the Oscars live. I took the kids with Allie and Becky and Becky's husband to go see Rent, which, by the way, I recommend everyone do that instead of watch the Oscars ever.
You know what? How many years later? 25 years later, the show's still amazing, still awesome, still the best night.
Where is it?
Is it National Theater?
So
At
much
National
fun
Theater,
still.
okay.
I mean, listen, the rule. I mean, we're not going to get into Rent.
Yeah, let's
okay.
review Rent 25 years later.
Just say.
Becky also.
Still
I don't have a lot of
Still
time
cried.
because Allie has to watch my kids. I will now
I
give you a
have
song-by-song
as
review of
much
Rent.
time as she will give me. I've
Okay.
got all the time in the world. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going.
So we went to see Rent, which I recommend doing instead of watching the Oscars ever, because it's always going to be good. And then we came back and we were catching the end, and I saw the first tweet I saw related to this was Esther Kostanowitz of the Bagel Report, one of our fellow podcasters. And she retweeted one of the videos without any commentary, just like one of the videos. And I watched the Japanese feed of Will Smith and Chris Rock, and I was bewildered. I was physically like confused and then concerned, and for a second I said, is this a bit? But it couldn't be. If you like, it couldn't have been if you watched the and then I didn't have a judgment in that moment, as the entire world rushed to judgment, but on a very gut level I felt like there was more going on here than, both between them, both contextually in the world, than I was qualified to dig in and comment on. And I was thinking of Kedenard, because Kedenard is often someone I go to help me understand the world, particularly if something is happening in the Black community. And actually, like, I wasn't even sure, is this a Black community?
I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And but on an instinctive level, before I said anything, I'm like, oh, I need to know what Kedenard thinks, because there's a lot happening here.
Right.
There's stuff with
That's a good point.
women, which really, I think where my heart started was with the way women are treated and talked about in any community. Then there was
and health, like someone who has a health issue too. Women health,
Right. When we talk about diversity,
women's
equity
health
and inclusion, and that has to do all people's illnesses and chronic illnesses, like that is also part of the conversation.
And so as I was processing this, I wanted to go and speak to Kedenard. And before we knew it, in the morning when we woke up, we had this text message saying, "Hey, Cormans, I'm here for you." So with that, back to my initial thinking of processing the element that has to do with women, and then also this question of, is this a Black community issue? It's like everyone watched this on stage, but is this an internal community issue with which, I should stay out of? I come to Kedenard to help us understand
important.
those. Let's start there as our threads. We're always so grateful for your insights.
Thank you so much. I love y'all. Y'all know that. And it's interesting because when I saw the incident and then had all of my friends in the WhatsApp chats commenting and then people stating their opinions, I knew that unequivocally I didn't want to weigh in. But to your question, is this a Black community issue? Yes. And that is why I reached out to y'all and was just like, I am available and willing to talk about it, because I think we've discussed this at length in our last conversation, and just in general, Facebook and social media have just not become a conducive place for like dialogue and for like true understanding. But when you can talk to people one-on-one and sort of let them know, hey, if you have an opinion and you'd like to share, you want to develop your thoughts, I'm willing. That has been really therapeutic for me, which is why I reached out to y'all. So thank you for like giving me this space and just always being great about it. So yes, it's a Black issue. Why? Because I would say the immediate reaction of myself and a lot of people I know is, quote unquote, this just set the Black community back X number of years or something like that. Like before we thought about data, before we thought about if it was real, before we thought about anything else, we were just like, how is this going to make us look? Which I'm not proud of. And I don't necessarily buy into the idea that everything that we do is measured against like the white gaze, but it's the truth. It's how we've been conditioned. And so that's why I would say this immediately became a Black community issue, because we all started talking about how this looks to us and how this looks in terms of
and when
what
you
we
say
discussed earlier.
When you say you're not proud, you mean not proud of having that be your first thought.
Yeah. Again, having everything that we do sort of stack up to, well, what will white people think of us now? And where does this affect us in terms of society, economics, justice? Like, that's silly and that's unfair, but that was the first thought. And then the second thought I had, which I started to talk about with Shai a little bit, was just this idea of toxic masculinity and how I think it exists. It's pervasive, but I also think that Black men and the Black community have internalized and normalized toxic masculinity in this idea that this is what defense of a woman looks like. I didn't need any think pieces, and I didn't need any time to think that this was wrong. As soon as I saw it, whether it was real or not, I was like, this is disgusting. There are so many reasons why, Will Smith should have practiced restraint. And there are so many reasons why this took away from his win, took away from the Oscars, took away from like our conversations about women's agency, all of those things. But, at the end of the day, I think what bothers me the most is that people that have taken up for him and people that have, sort of equated this to like him loving Jada and all of these
crazy things you do for love, as you said.
That people that I have respected their opinions on other things have been saying publicly, and I'm just like, you have to be kidding me. And this is a poor reflection of you. This is a poor reflection of how we talk about love. This is a poor reflection of, so many things. So those are my initial reactions.
Do you think so? What's interesting to me, and I feel for you. I can't walk in your shoes on this, but I think we all feel for you on the burden of when something happens for your community.
It's kind of like the Tinder swindler, a little bit. Not the
swindler,
exact, but like I'm like Bernie Madoff. Fucking Bernie Madoff. If one more person tell me, oh, that guy was Jewish, I'm like, we know he was Jewish. We know. Everybody knows.
Let's be clear. It's not the same. It's not the same as Will Smith, but that stress that you feel
of like
of someone in your
looking
community,
at you,
of someone in your community doing something, and then this becoming a conversation about your whole community. So this is like it's a duality question here. Is how do you feel about the fact that folks are sensitive and like would like, in some ways, like would like to know what the Black community thinks about this and give the Black community space to have voices on this, which is, I think, maybe different than other eras of society, versus a time where people wouldn't have made it a Black-white issue and would have maybe gone after Will Smith and not even acknowledged the racial pieces of it that would be going on in the conversation.
I would say there are a ton of resources out there now that there didn't used to be, in terms of articles and in terms of like Twitter lists and just all of these things, podcasts that can give you a glimpse into how the Black community or the Black woman community or whatever is reacting and sort of digesting an issue. While, like I said, this initially sort of embarrassed me and we all sort of had that first thought, I I'm not so like saddened by this issue. I'm not like lamenting this, and I'm not thinking this is going to have a really long-term, like lasting effect on the Black community. I'm embarrassed, and I'm just kind of like upset that it happened. I think that Will Smith will bounce back. I do think that like the conversations that we have maybe will benefit from them. I have no reason to think like this is like one of those stains on the community. It's just a part of this dialogue that we need to have about what exists in our community and what are the things that we're overcoming. So yeah, aside from that initial reaction, like this is not one of those things where I'm like worried about what it's gonna do. It's just
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
It's so seeing how, looking at it unfolding and then seeing now the aftermath of like every talk show host is doing their jokes about it, and I've been thinking to myself, the fallout could have been Chris Rock made a joke about Jada's health condition. Imagine Will Smith doesn't react, and then the fallout is having a very different conversation about what it means to use somebody's health autoimmune
disease against
or
them
autoimmune disease
in public
as a butt of a joke. And that could have been a very important, interesting conversation that we could be having now. And then thinking, but instead we have to have this other conversation about violence, about how this affects the Black community, about the assault, like all of these other things. And I
even if he were to have stood up and said something like about her health, or like this is inappropriate or something,
and
you're right.
I also want to be fair and not be self-righteous about this. In the moment, everybody processes things differently, everybody behaves differently. I can't say that if I were Will Smith, I would have calmly come up with an argument that I would have then stated eloquently during my acceptance speech, and then gone afterwards and educated everybody about alopecia.
And to Shai's point, we don't know what else was going on with him and her, and the context, the greater context for them.
It's clearly not a calibrated reaction, so you have to imagine there are many
and he's not known for behaving this way, so obviously something was going on.
There was a lot there, but still, I'm unequivocally like in my conviction about you need to have restraint, and you can't just go up and hit people. Like, violence isn't okay. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what the joke is. There have been worse jokes told. You cannot just go up and like physically assault somebody. And then I guess the bigger issue for me now is, from that act, the conversation around what the defense of Black women looks like, which is probably the bigger takeaway for me. And as I mentioned to Shai, we had a beautiful example of defending and supporting a Black woman with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson during her hearing. Cory Booker, say what you will about him. He used his time to speak into her, to pour into her, to support her, to give her a boost when she's getting all this sort of misogynistic, like racist, line of questioning. And then her wonderful husband, who is behind her as sort of like a silent rock, getting her coffee, getting her water, just being there, like showing his emotions and being vulnerable with her. That's how you defend women. Like, that's how you support women. And I don't know what Jada is thinking. But I do know that when you are in a spotlight like that, whether you like it or not, you're constantly setting an example. And I can say that based on how they live their lives, how they live their truth, the fact that she has the Red Table Talk show, what she says about raising her children, she recognizes and she accepts the responsibility she has to the community. And so if you all take that mantle, you do films like Pursuit of Happiness, and you do films like King Richard, and then, in your acceptance speech, you say all these things that you want to do and you want to be. You also have to take responsibility for the fact that you can't act like that, and you can't pretend like that was an example of you defending Black women, which is why I think so promptly, maybe not promptly, he apologized. And he said, like, violence is not okay, because That shit isn't okay. And the too many people in the Black community or in the community otherwise were trying to say that, oh yeah, I want my man to do this for me, or this is, this is what you do for your loved ones. No, absolutely not.
I think so. I think, the question of his apology taking some time, I'm really glad that he apologized. And that's like the very human side. Like there's another level where I just boiled this down to someone who his family was insulted. He flew off the handle and is, I'm sure, I hope, terribly embarrassed, but needed some time to process how he was going to apologize. So I give him the day or two, right? Like, in fact, if he like did a phony apology that was like right away for the publicists, that might have been, less believable, right? Like if you're willing to go up and knock someone out on stage.
Like one of the most watched events where you are being honored. I mean, it's really bizarre.
So
the question I have then is
7 years old.
Let's turn to Chris Rock.
I just can't get he's 57.
Look, I have a question. Okay. We are all adults who have like seen other adults older than Will Smith lose tempers. I'm not excusing him. I agree with Kedenard. Like you can't do that. And as a role model, you shouldn't. But like there's a human part of all of this. So I want to go to the human that is Chris Rock here, because we haven't talked really about him. And at this point, I don't know if he's put out a statement. Someone put out a fake statement about him, which of course the lazy media, not the real media, but like the lazy, like, bloggy media was passing around. We, totally unrelated to this, have tickets to, like, for months, Becky and I have had tickets to see Chris Rock at the Dar Constitution Hall because like he's one of my all-time favorite stand-up comedians. And I mean, I've loved him since I was a little kid, since he was on SNL, right? And I heard, I don't know for sure, but apparently like his shows are selling out now.
Yeah, the ticket sales have just like gone through the roof.
We have really good floor seats too.
We got
we have really good floor seats. So I have two questions. One is, what do we think about Chris Rock and all of this?
He can take a punch. Like, my God.
That's pretty much everyone's reaction.
He deserves the Oscar. How composed was he? Like, I would have just cried.
He did not. I
didn't miss a beat. Like, I give him a lot of credit.
I feel like he was just stunned. I feel like he was totally.
But I give him a lot of credit for just
an out of body experience. What's your theory?
I have two theories. One is, I think, first of all, we'll never know if it was premeditated, but I think Chris Rock had no idea what Will Smith was doing, and so he laughed when he saw him.
I think he laughed because I think exactly, he was laughing in his face, and I think he thought that like, oh, he's gonna come up and do a bit with me and like get me on stage or like give me a hard time. I don't think he imagined it ever.
But the other thing is, like, stand-up comedians, are harsh. When he was the host of the Oscars, he went after Jada that last time. Now it was a different type of joke, and it was more self-deprecating to himself as well. But like, he is not even half as vicious as Ricky Gervais, who did the Golden Globes.
Oh my God.
The stuff that he says is like so deeply offensive. What Ricky Gervais says. He says horrible things to people.
So I think in the Oscars, like, I don't know for sure, but like in the Oscars desire to have an exciting show, didn't seem like they did a lot of directing of the comics. It seems like they got it seemed like a show that was generally not under control. And he was on a certain level, like, I'm not excusing his joke. I think his joke was tasteless, and the market should decide that and be like, gross, you shouldn't do that, and lecture him for it. But I also think that comedians, like, this is part of their job. Their job is to go up and they shock people and they razz people that they see as, quote unquote, powerful. And while Jada may not be, I think the Smith family is like a target for Chris Rock because of their power in Hollywood vis-a-vis him, right? Like, but it was a cheap move to go after Jada and not Will, right? Because it's really about getting to Will, right? But so on one level, like I'm analyzing it though, for him going up and doing his job, he's delivering on the promise of what happens when you put Chris Rock up on the stage in front of all those people. He's coming out to go out and probably insult someone in the audience. And I think on a certain level, maybe he was trying to get away with, like almost like it was a cheap.
I think he thought it was a softball.
Yeah.
I think he thought it was it was a lob, that he got to make a joke about the Smith family and move on, and and he's funny because, first of all, Will laughs. Will's like going along with it. He doesn't realize like maybe how upset she is. And Chris Rock's reaction is, oh, come on, guys. Like, that's not so bad. Like, it could be so much worse. And something in there, in that very quick in between happened. There was a moment there.
Yeah. I heard that Will's, like his initial reaction to things is to laugh, whether or not he has processed what's happening. So I don't know if he found it funny. And then
I'm sure he didn't, but was in that nervous laughter. You're on television, your face is on the screen.
Two, it was in poor taste. Definitely unfair because it's an autoimmune disease. She didn't choose it. She's not really, I don't know. I might be like a total traitor and like just being unfair to the deeper thread, but I didn't think it was that bad. Like it's he said G.I. Jane. Like it's not an attack on like the condition. It's just, I think, the sensitivity of Jada, her relationship with Will, the fact that he had gone after her previously, like Shai said, and all of those things wrapped up into one. I can see how the fact of the alopecia and like the condition can be a lightning rod. But for me, it does not warrant such a reaction, and it does not warrant violence. I'm finding it hard to connect the two.
Can I pull back to something you said before about other people's reactions? Because like Shai said, like, okay, I needed to take a minute. You said you needed to take a minute, right? You're like, I'm not going to just give my opinion on this right away. Like, what is happening in this situation? And I just think it's really interesting. And I don't know if Becky and Shai, you've seen this too, watching the different people react and make statements, like write out statements, put them on Instagram, and people who I, from following their very self-righteous accounts or very, activisty accounts, expected to bring up the agency of women. Like, what about, like, what makes you think that Jada, A, can't defend herself, or B, you offering to get her a coffee or a glass of water is not the right way to support her?
Right,
or like, get her some slippers because she's wearing those high heels. Like, let her, like, he completely took away her agency. And all these, there's so many interesting things to talk about. And yet I've been surprised to see some people be like, two things can be right at the same time. Not okay to slap someone. Yes, okay to defend someone. And I've just been like, wait, what? But you're supposed to be totally against this. But now, does like Will Smith, like, does he owe you a job or something? I don't know. Like, are you like getting a role on his next move? Like, I just find it very interesting the way it's clear, like the people who've kind of defended him. I don't know. It's like a little bit Hollywoody, these reactions.
But also it's helpful, right? Because it gives you a sense of
or people don't see it. Right. Don't see it.
I think that I've gotten a glimpse into people's traumas, how people were raised, what people believe, simply in their reaction to this. And it could be as simple as 140 characters in a tweet. But I'm looking at a lot of people differently. Like, wow, I wonder like how you approach your relationships. I wonder how you love yourself. Like, what are you telling your children? So this has been very revealing.
It has been.
I think also, the thing I've really also seen is a lot of people deleting their initial tweets. A lot of people, this conversation is this is an opportunity to have a really interesting conversation, and I want to talk in general broadly about women in a moment, but like instead, like everyone had to put their quippy quip out and their one line out and their decision out, and then suddenly
abuse is wrong
and rewriting their
defending
tweets.
women is right, like damn right he should defend his, and you're just like, just take a minute, just a minute.
But then I think like everyone should have taken a deep breath, maybe processed it a little bit.
Like I'll tell you what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm saying, you know what? Let's see what Chris Rock, Will Smith, the Academy, and Jada, let's see what they work out and how they feel about it. And then I'll see if I have an opinion. But right now, I don't feel like I have that. Like, I want to see.
I will say, if there's one group that I think has no leg to stand on, is the Academy. I think they should stay completely out of this.
It was their event. No, it was their event, so they're liable.
I guess they're liable. I will say, what's going on with the security in that event?
Saying, that they're liable. They do have it. Like, let's see what those.
How easy is it to run on one of those stages?
And I'll take my beat, and even then, I still don't think I'll really.
You know what's interesting too is that the producer this year was Will Packer, a Black man, and I don't know how he's feeling at the end of all this, but I do think that. Even if you're not talking about liability, if you're talking about like examining how we have comedians host the show, you know, when do we pause? Like, under what circumstances should we just say, like, let's just, you know,
give the awards out?
Yeah, there do need to be conversations around that.
And I was saying that to Shai. I was like, why does this have to be a roast? Why can't we just honor the people who should be honored and give out the awards? And like, why do we need to start like making fun of everyone? And Shai was like, well, it's not Yom Kippur. Like, it's an award show. He's like, that's why. He's like, because people actually like, they want to try to get people to actually watch this thing. Then I was like, oh yeah, I guess. And sounds terrible and crass. And I don't know what the producer's thinking, but somebody's standing there going, oh my God, thank God somebody's talking about the Oscars, like for the first time in years.
But
like somebody's standing around going, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is making money for someone.
Yeah, it is.
This is good news for somebody in the production world. But always.
But if they want, you know, if they wanted to be, they get so suckered because, like, to your point about comedians, right? Like, I remember growing up, so you had the famous Billy Crystal one, right? Everyone always rings back to the Billy Crystal one because he poked gentle fun, but really it was like this, like, old-timey Hollywood roast.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't remember Whoopi's, but I like the jokes, but I remember Whoopi was so like dignified. I remember her gown, and I remember when she hosted, right? And I always remember they were like, but they were the three comic relief people, right? Was the comic relief was Whoopi, Billy Crystal, and Robin Williams. Everyone was like, we can't have Robin Williams. He's too erratic. We don't know what'll happen. He could say something R-rated. If they're so afraid of those types of things, then like, fine, roll out Hugh Jackman, have him do some song and dance, get Neil Patrick Harris. Like, I'd love to see Lady Gaga host the Oscars. She doesn't have to be funny the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
give out a bunch of words, and I think that they're, you know, what you'll get.
That's who I'd like to see host the Oscars.
Oh, she'd be so good.
Who?
Well, Nicole Byer.
That would definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think she knows how. I mean, I can't imagine her.
It'd be so. She would like. I could just see her like not knowing people's names. It'd be. It'd be amazing.
Hilarious.
Tig Notaro and Nicole Byer together
hosting the Oscars. Let's start a campaign.
So I'm just saying there are ways.
They literally would.
Well, because the thing is that they're still trying to get ratings. They're still trying to get somebody to watch this thing. So they are. I think they're trying to have like why is Chris Rock even giving out the award for documentary? Why?
Yeah, because he wasn't the host. He was just a presenter.
Like he was just a presenter for one award. He's got a tour coming up.
Mm-hmm.
What is he doing besides his tour? Why is he even in this? Right. And so I think it's this weird algorithm that they try to do to try to figure out who can I get to watch when at what part. You know, Questlove is in the category. There's got to be a connection there. I think.
But again, so
before kind of falsified.
I actually don't believe in. I don't want it to seem like the problem is Chris Rock and the joke and like the act of the roast at award shows.
No,
because I do think that there are more artful and better ways to do it, but that's not the issue for me.
That's not the problem.
I said, I don't even think his joke was that bad compared to other jokes that have been delivered.
Right. But it does bring you to lead us to the question of like, what are these shows even about? Who should host them?
It's not something like this is not about a single moment, a single joke. There's obviously a history and layers to these sorts of eruptions or reactions, you know? So
and now what is the implication for, because who said it? I think it was Kathy Griffin.
Yeah.
Or somebody else who was like, well, what about like, now does this embolden others to like run up and slap people if they get roasted at a show? Or
it's very interesting that it was
copycats.
It's very interesting that it was Kathy Griffin who did the beheaded Donald Trump thing, right?
And was like,
I'm sure she's gotten her share of death threats, and so
destroyed.
So I want to talk about women though for a second. I want to zoom out from Chris Rock and whether or not that comment was negative, you know, like was a 5 or a 10 on the inappropriate scale. But I do want to touch on a theme that Lily and Becky and I have been exploring as we've explored the history of the Jewish community's representation of itself and women in pop culture. And there was also a thread that really hit me, which was like the use of women as the butt of the joke to raise yourself up. Because one thing that we've been exploring in our own community is that one of the ways in which like the old, and I'm not saying that it can be undone or should be undone right now. I'm just saying that it should be corrected going forward. But one of the like ways in which Jewish comedians, male Jewish comedians, became accepted in mainstream American society was like all the jokes about their moms and their wives, and emboldening and filling up that those tropes, and
subsequently has been damaging to the representation role of Jewish women in pop culture.
I imagine, I imagine maybe there's a thread of this across all of comedy, because when Allie and I were in South by Southwest, we saw a few comedians, and one of them, his shtick was like, I couldn't believe he was still like, this shtick was still a thing where he basically like complains about his wife. And he was a young guy. He's like younger than us. He was like complaining about his wife. And then every once in a while he did something bad about himself. Then he complained about his wife some more. And it just seems so out of place now. But then I was like, well, is that just like this tool that has happened for men versus women in comedy for a long time? Like, let's say you buy my premise that, Chris Rock is kind of punching at Will's power and he's going through Jada to do it. Is that all kind of, is there merit to saying there's something here about going after women as a tool for raising yourself that also needs to be talked about?
I think in this case you could look at it both ways, because I'll let Kedenard go first.
I agree. I do think it was easier to go after Jada, although, like, again, I don't think that landed that many laughs. Like, there's so much material you can use.
It didn't land that many laughs.
Yeah, and
it wasn't a great joke.
Well, yeah, the market decided on that joke. Was like,
it was just
like, okay, Also, like G.I. Jane, like that's so old. Like no one gives a shit about that movie.
Exactly.
And I also just want to point out that he's comparing to her. He's saying, "Oh, G.I. Jane too." He's not calling her a goblin. He's calling her. He's saying a really.
I guess you're gonna make like a Navy SEAL
independent woman who.
Oh, that's a totally different take.
Who is.
But he's saying is that the reason you're up for the role is because you shaved your head, but you had to shave your head for a different reason.
Yeah, I get it.
Like,
but again, he's not saying, I guess we'll see you as the next,
in that concentration camp.
Yeah,
whatever.
Exactly. That's why I was like,
looking forward to that World War II movie where you're
it's
a prisoner.
So just again, if we're really gonna pick apart and analyze the joke,
but what Shai's saying is not about the joke. Is that was he using her to get to Will, as opposed to just writing an interesting, creative, smart joke about Will?
I'm also just saying, let's take a deep breath also and just ask the question of like, or how about this? I'll just posit being mindful about using women as the out group in comedy and the negative effects of that.
It is. So what immediately came to mind from you, Shai, is that social media via Vines and Snapchat and now TikTok and Instagram Reels has added new fire, has added oxygen, has put more life into this line of comedy, because some of the most successful influencers and comedians are Black men acting like women and sort of portraying the most annoying or the most stereotypical parts of women. You know what I mean? Like how vain we are, how sensitive we are, how, we sort of manipulate and try to get men and just all of these things. I say that, and I risk putting myself out there to say that the idea of, making fun of women or using women as the butt of a joke is not going anywhere. In fact, I think it has just, reached new levels because of now the platforms that you can do it. So that's my opinion.
That's a whole other layer.
I sort of I feel like that's in some ways where we have to leave it.
I do appreciate you kind of going a little bit further in this, a little bit deeper, and sharing that perspective and opening yourself up that way. So
yeah, absolutely.
And if the slap has served any higher purpose, then this is it. This conversation. Because we wouldn't be having this conversation otherwise.
Now, so here's one question.
At the very least, you can have an adult conversation about the stupidity that he did and unfortunate thing that he did. Then that's good.
My question to my sisters is: can we still make fun of Mom on the podcast?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I feel like we have to balance it a bit more.
We love her so much. Our mom is the greatest.
Just make sure I feel like we have to keep more.
And she
say just as many nice things.
And she
I definitely don't. I definitely think it was next to Mom is you that we we make Shai. So I feel Mom is probably one of the only women I make fun of as much.
Shai's office is booby trapped, and his desk is the boss level of the booby trap. Where if I move 1 centimeter in the wrong direction, I'm either going to get
a bubbly water over,
or I'm going to spill an open club soda can over all of these electronics. It's terrifying in here.
So let's end on this note of we'll go around and do some recommendations, but we'll end this heavier discussion with extraordinary gratitude to Kedenard, because we are so honored that you want to have this conversation with us and always make us smarter and challenge ourselves.
And I hope it makes our listeners smarter. And
it does.
I think we did everyone a favor, because looking at all the stupid shit online
makes you a smart.
All the memes, all the dumb celebrity responses and stuff. It gets the whole the more important parts of this get washed out.
And the other thing I would say is to take a breath and say, we love our mom. She's the best. We wouldn't be the people we are without her.
But and you should, and then make fun of through Mom. That's never gonna
no. We don't make fun of. Yeah, that's a whole different. They're different. Yeah. No. We make fun of Mom for 2 reasons.
Through
One,
Mom. Directly through Mom.
Hilarious.
She's so funny.
Kedenard, what's coming out later this week is maybe, and we're not making fun of her, she was on board with this, is a video of my mom and Lily reacting.
I'm in worse shape than Mom is in that video.
It is the best thing you've ever seen. That's number one. I think
brighten your day.
Number 2 is Mom is in on the joke, and I think that is another key thing. When we go too far, Mom tells us, but overall, Mom is in on the joke, and it's why we love joking around with her. Before we wrap up, it's always also good to just talk and hear what people are watching. I'm going to start and say I am watching Life and Beth 4 episodes in. I love this show. This
I'm
is
so
Amy
glad.
Schumer's,
Becky and I are really
think,
excited about it.
finest work. It is nuanced. It is understated.
Right.
There's a Jewish cultural element that I think is really thoughtful and interesting. It's not integral to the story yet. It might get integral, but I really loved the flashbacks and the little sprinkles of that in it. And Dave Attell playing a totally insane rabbi in the second episode was great. And then her group of friends, played by, and I want to make sure I get all the names right, played by Sass Goldberg and Ariel Siegel, and I really want to make sure Yamanika Saunders. They play her best friends, and I would want to watch a show just about them. So, Kedenard, you got to watch this show. I really want to talk about this with you.
I will.
And it's just really about life and love and death. It's a slice of life show. It's really beautiful. What about you, Beck?
Oh, I'm finally watching Inventing Anna.
Oh,
So good.
Oh, so good.
It
So
does not make me
good.
want to be VIP.
I can't.
Anything to do with VIP.
You.
I have never liked a minute of a Shondaland TV show, and I love that. I loved every minute of Inventing Anna.
I think it's so good. I don't know why I was thinking about it today, in fact, but I was just like, I don't know that I'm mad at Anna.
I don't think you have to decide that. I think the beauty of the show is that you don't have to be mad at anyone, but you either have to be so smart to be rich or so stupid.
It's no in between.
There's no in between.
There's very few.
That show taught me.
There's very few characters that are not terrible people, in her story. There's the trainer is not, Laverne Cox is not a terrible person. And then maybe the videographer that goes to Morocco is maybe not a terrible person, but otherwise,
the guy who's the murderer from Promising Young Women.
Exactly, he's the murderer. But pretty much everybody else, I'm feels like you deserve what you got. What was coming to you? You're all terrible people.
Yeah,
It's it was great though.
I enjoyed watching that, so I'm glad you're watching that, Becky.
What about you, Kidnar? What are you watching?
I'm rewatching Chernobyl.
Wow.
That's quite the rewatch.
It wasn't brutal enough the first time. Really?
And you know what? I don't like heavy things. I really avoid them. Like we discussed last time when we were watching Yellow Jackets. I was just like, I'm not one that will, opt to watch thrillers or anything, too close to history. But Doug hadn't seen it. And I just thought it was so well done. That I just wanted to see it again. So there's that, but then to balance it out on Netflix, Young, Famous, and African. It is pure trash. It's just typical, it's I love that it's the kind of reality where you revel in the clothes and the cars.
The one that Becky and I saw at the Bling Empire.
Yes.
Oh,
exactly that, but set in Johannesburg,
right?
So those two things.
That's all the rec I need. That's awesome. Becky and I, we have to get on that and text each other constantly. Cool. Well, I'm just gonna say that I am knees deep in Last Kingdom.
I'm not up on it. Valerie doesn't want to watch it.
This is such an epic show.
What is Last Kingdom? I've not heard of it.
It is so good, Shy. This season
it's
a show about Vikings.
It's a show about Vikings, but it's so much more than that. It has a lot of history.
Really good characters.
It's a lot about this moment in history between the Christians and the Danes. And
can trust my judgment because, like her, I was not on board with Yellow Jackets. So I feel like if I didn't like
it, is a bit there's a lot of
Last Kingdom. You can trust
bludgeoning though, so they
I also think if you watch Last Kingdom,
it's really good. The character development is really good and the storyline's really good.
The other thing is if you watch The Last Kingdom, which it's about the earliest foundings of England when the Danes and the Saxons were fighting over
England.
But it also really, really makes you be like, wow, we kind of realize what was going to happen when they decided to get out of their borders and start colonizing other places, because these guys are all awful, doing awful things. But the intrigue and the war and the palace, it's like Game of Thrones without the dragons and breastfeeding dragons and
like siblings.
Well, and it's based on real historical,
traveling from one land to another,
and it's
Doesn't
like
have any
real
of that.
historical
Really,
borders, and it's based on real, like they use real historical like facts and stuff. So it's I think it's interesting, but also like the love stories are good, and the main actor is so hot. Oh my god,
I feel like the love
gorgeous.
stories aren't really.
I love they're not a big part of the show, but they're good.
But
when they're in the show, they're good.
They bring the ships, like when they
when the ships are there, they bring the ships, and oof.
There aren't.
It's hard to keep me interested in a Viking show 5 seasons in, and
you watched 2 Viking shows. You watched one more whole Viking show than we watched.
I abandoned that one. That one. Sorry, Josh, it was not good. Josh recommended it. Too many Vikings.
All right. Well, thank you to our amazing guest, Kedenard. Would you like people to follow you? Would you like people to follow you?
Sure, why not? I don't have any tweets, but I'm on Instagram.
Cool.
Katie_zucchini. You can find me there.
All right. Lily?
Chichi, CHICHI Gomez on Twitter.
Becky Beck?
At Paper BK Princess on Twitter.
And you can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table. Friday Night Movie at Friday Night Movie to catch all of our shenanigans. Friday Night Movie Pod to sign up for our email newsletter that we promise you won't get any more than once a month. Probably, I mean, at this point, we're down to like 2 a year, which is amazing. And then the theme music is by What Does It Eat? And it was great talking to you all.
All right.
Thank you so much.